welcome to the MVP Show. My intention is that you listen to the stories of these MVP guests and are inspired to become an MVP and bring value to the world through your skills. If you have not checked it out already, I do a YouTube series called How to Become an MVP. The link is in the show notes. With that, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from South Dakota in the United States. She works at Avanade as a manager. She was first awarded her MVP in 2023. She actively participates in industry conferences, community days, and user group speaking events, sharing her insights and connecting with fellow enthusiasts. She specializes in no-code design and is passionate about implementing custom solutions that satisfy both business and user needs. You can find links to her bio and social media, etc. in the show notes for this episode. As always, welcome to the show, Heidi.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Mark. This is really awesome to be here.
Good to have you on the show. I always like to start off with getting some background. So with that in mind, food, family, and fun, what do they mean to you?
Well, the food, I'll start with that one. Food is actually like my therapy, not just in eating, but I love to cook. I love to watch food. Food Network is how I fall asleep at night. I love to watch cooking videos and shows and stuff. So that's kind of how I feel about food. Fun and family, those are two of the same thing. We like to have a lot of fun with my family. I'm very busy. I've got 3 boys, 21, 8, and 5. So we do a lot of baseball games and football games, lots of sports, and constantly running around to that stuff. We try and take most of the summer and head up to the lake on the weekends and do some boating and just kind of disconnect from the plugged-in world that we have here in South Dakota. So love to spend time on the lake, love to watch sports all winter when it's snowing, 8 months out of the year in South Dakota. So it's kind of what we do for fun.
8 months of the year it snows.
Bit of exaggeration, but more like 6. But yeah, we do get a ton of snow in the winter, so we don't go too far.
Well, I'm the opposite. I never drop below -5 degrees Celsius. Sorry, I never go positive 5 degrees Celsius. So I don't know what that's in Fahrenheit, but it means I don't even get a frost.
It seems pretty mild. Consider yourself lucky.
Yeah. So snow is something I go to visit to go skiing. I don't ever have it local. Very cool. Tell me about your story. How did you get into tech? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I guess it all starts back in college. I think it's funny that we go to college we have this idea of what we're going to be, and then it completely goes a different direction, which is why I love hearing stories of MVPs and how they started. So I was pretty similar. I went to school to teach math. So I actually have a background in math, and I was going to be a math teacher, and that was my life plan. And then I got out of school and applied at a bank because there was no teaching jobs. And they saw my resume with the problem solving, the math skills, and they're like, we think you should be a business analyst. I said, okay, I don't know what that is, but I'll do it. So connecting that problem solving with skills with the issues that the bank was having, and particularly in the business intelligence department, that was just really a good fit for me to be a business analyst. So I think that really gave me my solid background today in SharePoint. That's really where my strength lies is in SharePoint. But being a business analyst, you get to see the databases behind the scenes, the SQL. You get to get into the reporting. You get to work with the business itself and gathering requirements and making that happen, in the end product. So I think that was kind of my solid base there, and did that for a while. And then in 2016, when I still remember where I was when they announced the Power Platform. And when Power Automate and would Flow back in the day, I still remember what I was doing exactly. I knew that I had to be a part of that. So my current job wasn't ready to go online, so I went somewhere else that was. And I really took a shift from the SharePoint on-prem world to the online world and jumped in, both feet first. And ever since then, that's all I've been doing is the online stuff. And then really that kind of got me connected to some other people in the community. And that's really the second half of my story, which I'll pause there because that's kind of a long intro.
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. It's interesting. You talk about online or, and previously being on-prem. And I find now for the last 3 years, I don't think I've ever had an on-prem conversation anymore. It's only ever.
There are still people out there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think people are panicking that SharePoint end of life on-prem, doesn't it? Isn't it 2026 or something like that?
Yep, I think that's what they're saying.
So I think there's going to be a lot of lift and shifts to the cloud for those last folks to come on. But also I'm seeing some massive SharePoint implementations up around, in the tens of millions of dollars in storage per year in online for really large enterprise organizations. So it's still definitely a big workhorse, right, for many orgs.
Absolutely. And it's still the back end to a whole lot of stuff that we use today. And people don't quite understand that in some cases.
So tell us, you fell in love with the Power Platform, as did I. Which it only got the name Power Platform, I think, was it 2019? I think it got that name after, you're right, 2016 is when Power Apps came out. And Steven Siciliano with Flow. I wish I had not lost. I had a Flow shirt back in the day, and I've kept my Power App original shirt, but I haven't got my Flow one for some reason. So tell me, what happened then? So what was your journey once you'd started building, solutions using those new tools?
Sure. Yeah, I remember telling my boss at the time that my new job title was going to be Flow Master. I specifically remember that because I loved the name Flow. But yeah, once I started doing that, and it's a funny story. When I started the next job to do the Power Platform, I was really excited about this, and I got the job, and they had a SharePoint Online migration that they were trying to do. They're like, we need to get to online so we can go use this Power Platform, etc. I was like, okay, sounds good. Let's do the online migration first. And I started day one. I was ready to do the migration. And then they tasked me with, you need to remove our third-party workflow system and move us to the Power Platform. And I was like, I have never worked with Power Platform before. I know it's awesome, and I know that I want to use it, but I don't know how to do it. So that's really how I got my roots in it, is I had to learn from the trenches, ground up. This was at the time when there wasn't that much stuff out there. Honestly, it was so new, and there were so many the only things we had were videos, and the people in the community that really embraced this and ran with it. There was there's no history books on the Power Platform. It came out in whatever year, and that was it. So had to kind of cultivate all my resources through videos and the community and learning. And I built my first Power App. And I tell everyone it took me 9 months, because low code does not mean easy. It does not mean low complexity. This still takes a lot, especially when you're doing it for the first time, and then implementing it to an organization that has never heard of it either. So that was really got me going on my first application, and then flows, and then really just kept doing those kinds of solutions, just rinse and repeat for that same organization for many years.
What was that very first app? What was the design for?
The first application.
Yeah.
So there was a couple different use cases, and the one was a document review system, kind of like the policies, procedures, and things that have to be reviewed, and on a yearly basis, and then also a project management tool. So they were using this third-party workflow for those two specific use cases, and they wanted to remove that and replace it with the Power Platform. Nice.
If you look across your career to date, what's kind of been the career highlights? And this might go pre-Power Platform, but what have been, and when I think about career highlights, I'm talking about, were there key people that mentored you? Were there key, what were the inflection points that when you look back across your career, like, I'm glad I made that decision that led to this, that type of thing?
I think you made a good point there. Excuse me. It's always the people that I remember. It's the people that made me feel recognized and enabled to reach for the stars here and do these things. And one of my very first managers, really, she always made a point to send us to trainings, for example. You cannot replace that in-person training that you get when you go to these conferences. And so whether I was ready or not, she would send me to these conferences because she knew that I would just go immerse myself and learn and come back and bring all those things back to my daily life and just be rejuvenated. And so that in particular, and just the way she trained me to answer to emails and to work with others in the organization, with a positive manner. I think that those things are really what keeps me driving to the success I'm having today. So I would say for sure her. And then the other token is a mentor. At that job, I reached the top of, no one else understood SharePoint at the level I did. I had nowhere else to look up, and that's when you have to look outside. So that's when I reached out to my friend Liz Sundet at Microsoft, and she was my mentor for a couple of years and really brought me to the next, just kept me going down that technical path.
Nice. You mentioned email, Lynn, and it's those little sparks of how you do something that can impact people. When you say she taught you about how to, what was, because I think email is such an important part still of communication in business. What did she teach you? What kind of stuck with you? What do you take or do now, and when you advise others around email management?
I think that honestly, in college, I also took a technical writing class, which at the time was awful. Like we had to do things like write a manual for the microwave. Like how do you, and think about all the steps of how you unbox the food and how you put it in the very technical, detailed, that and being very thorough in emails, and then also with the positive tone. And, always step back and take a breath before you respond. like I learned that. So never respond angry. And I always leave the end of my emails please let me know if there's anything else I can do, whether I mean it or not. I think it's a good salutation to close the email and just let the people know that you're still there and willing to help.
I like it. Very cool. Very cool. Good advice. Tell me, you obviously didn't stay at customer side. You made a transition to partner side. What was that transition for you?
Yeah, I after working couple local organizations, I went to consulting. And the reason I'd switched is because I got sick of doing the same stuff every day. So, and not every day, but it was kind of the same projects over and over again. And you can kind of feel yourself plateauing and your skill set. And, I think there's a quote of if you're comfortable, you're doing something wrong, at your job. And that's how I was comfortable. So I wanted to get out there and be scared and start to do some new projects. And that was really what drove me to move into the consulting world.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been consulting now?
So I did a small firm for a couple of years, but then I've been with Avanade for 2 years now.
Nice.
So 4 years total-ish.
Okay. Can you give me some comparisons between partner side? Because a lot of people ask me when it comes to career advancement, what are my options? And I say, well, there's really 3 different organization groups you can work for. You can work for Microsoft, ultimately go, get a blue badge and work for the mothership. You can work partner side, or you can work in customer. So you've been in those 2. If you were to do a comparison, pros and cons between working for customer, working for partner, what do they look like for you?
That's a great question. I think that one of the hardest parts of consulting is coming into the organization and you have to learn the culture and how things work in very short time. If you come in as a client, the client side, you get a wonderful orientation program and culture and everyone knows your name. But when you come in as a consultant, you have to learn how it works fast because it's your job to be successful and keep things moving regardless of how they work. So you got to learn fast. But one of the plus sides is that you can work with those clients, and then you can see how you can draw from your experience from other engagements. So you kind of learn how things work, and then that really just builds your skill set. So you become this big conglomerate that has all this information and knowledge of how you can best help the client. And I think that's why they like working with consultants too in larger firms, is that we're the people that have done this for everyone else, and we've drawn our own lessons learned from that, and are able to move them forward.
Nice. I like it. What's top of mind for you right now? Right, we're in 2024. In the last few years, we've seen a lot of announcements and a lot of changes inside Microsoft around Copilot, of course. So when you look at your runway for the next 12 months, the rest of this year, what does it look like for you?
That's another great question. I do a lot of speaking events. I have a lot of that on tap this year. Particularly the Power Platform Conference is coming up, so I am working on that and just trying to immerse myself in the Power Platform still. Copilot has taken over my life a little bit. I've been doing a lot of Copilot, M365 Copilot. I do see in my future a lot more of those engagements and doing that tech readiness. I think having a SharePoint background is key for this Copilot stuff because obviously Copilot can only leverage the things it has access to, and SharePoint is one of those places it can access. So bringing my skills with the SharePoint background and merging that into some Copilot engagements will be in my future for sure. But trying to stay close to the Power Platform too. Like I mentioned, I do a lot of M365 these days, and I kind of miss my Power Platform friends. So I'm trying to revisit Copilot Studio and some of those other things that are coming out.
So what are you speaking on in Vegas?
So I have 2 sessions. I'm actually doing a session with Eliza Benitez, I think her name is. So,
yeah.
Yes, Benitez.
She's from my country.
Yes, she is. So we are doing a co-session on the approvals kit for Power Automate, and then how you can also leverage Copilot Studio to connect to that so that you can see like where your approvals are at and what process they're in. And then I have a second session on Power Automate and Teams and the integrations between the two of those. So a lot of Power Automate at this conference.
Nice. I might see you there. I'm also speaking. Tell me the MVP program. How did you end up finding out about it, getting involved? How did you get nominated? Tell me a bit about that.
Sure. So I found out I remember it was in 2019. I remember from my mentor, Liz. I have been attending the conferences and the SharePoint Saturdays and things for years. As I mentioned, my manager, always encouraged me to go to those. And I got to that point where I was ready to take what I know from all this stuff and share it with others. So my mentor said, like, you should be a speaker. And I kind of laughed at her like, no, it's not for me. But, it's you gather all this stuff from other people. It's time to share with the world. So, I am gravitating towards those things that I'm scared of, and that was one of them. So I started doing speaking events. I did my first one in January of 2020, I think, and then everything shut down. So I had just gotten this wonderful first event, and I had a great crowd. It was like the highest attended of the session time. I was so excited, and then everything shut down. So then I really kind of had a lull in there of like, how do I continue to be a part of this and this community from home, on lockdown. So I just continued doing speaking events. I tried to do some virtual user groups. I think that my goal is really just to share what I've learned with others in hopes that someone can benefit from it. And that is one thing she told me too. When I asked her about the MVP program, she said, you don't seek it, it finds you. And, you should be asking, like, what can I do for the community rather than how do I become an MVP? And that kind of resonated with me. So I just kept working doing my sessions and work. And I started a blog, just keep track of it. And then she ended up nominating me in 2022, I think, is when I got nominated.
Wow. Awesome. That is so good and such a good story. Last question I have for you before we go. What's been, if you were to point to one automation or one app or one solution that you have done, what's kind of like the story that you tell about once I built X, Y, Z and it had this impact? What is that for you?
I think that it was definitely that first one that I built, that document control solution. And that one I do lots of variations with on sessions. The root of the story was how to take that out of InfoPath into Power Apps, because that is something that everyone should do if they haven't looked into it. They should start looking at ridding an InfoPath from their environment. But, learning...
I didn't know it still existed. I thought it was all gone.
It's in the wild still. Yeah, there's still some out there. It is, yep. But I think that's one of them. But also, building that form solution, also considering some of those... Don't just build your solutions. You need to actually take a step back and work with the end users first. A lot of times they're doing these things that they're just done forever. And that's the way we've always done it, and you say, but why? And then you have these conversations about what is possible, not about the technology. This is what you're doing. Let me see, do you need to do that? And then you can start to connect those dots and then work that into the tool set that we have available as technicians.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If you like the show and want to be a supporter, check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. Thanks again, and see you next time.